Hello, welcome. Another interview with Mr. Frank Perry, but this one's going to be about his spiritual music and solo career. The other two were on separate things within his career. Okay, first question. When did you realise you needed to go into this direction and stop the avant-garde music?
Okay. Well, that was in 1973 when I had a real crisis. Looking at my diary, I could see I was extremely busy doing gigs or recording or rehearsing. I was every day, all the time, I was busy. And I was also, I think I was working, no, anyway, I was busy. And one weekend, there just happened to be nothing on. So I thought, I'll get back into my own music now. And so I had these instruments that were from the East that were to do with meditation and stuff. And so I realised it took me quite a long time to get back into listening, hearing them how I used to hear them when I work on my own. And so I thought it took me quite a while to get back into that state of consciousness. So I had to think, wow. And then when I was doing the next rehearsal with the normal avant-garde jazz stuff, that really did it, because I struck this gong, and having spent all weekend kind of meditating on this Burmese meditation temple gong, I'm kind of, and it rings on a long time, and I'm kind of used to hearing it now in this totally other way. And these other guys, and it's like nothing to do with this gong, nothing to do with what it was saying or anything else. So I could tell that they were like, oh, it's that sound, this sound will go with it, or I'll add that one, or do this to it, or whatever. So they're just interacting with a sound. They're not what's living in the sound. And what I was interested in was what lived in sound, and that I found mostly in singing bowls and gongs and those kind of sacred instruments. I mean, cowbells, you can't say, well, obviously in a cowbell, you go bang, that's it, wherever you hit it sounds the same. But with these singing bowls, they make a whole load of sound, so it's like a whole world. Just one instrument becomes a world, and then it's kind of speaking to me and saying things to me. I just had that ability. And then at the same time, a discarnate Tibetan, that's to say someone who was living in Tibet thousands of years ago, but is no longer in a body, but they would come to me and initiate me into the deeper levels of working with sound, especially. Actually, I mean, he would do it with everything, whether it was I had stuff that was from the Second World War, military shells, brass shells that had bullets in and stuff, and then I had glass stuff, and I had gear wheels that I found on the pavement or on the road, and hubcaps. I had all, and I could still would do it with that. But the sacred instruments, it went a lot further. He would help me to observe what was being created on the etheric plane, on the astral plane, on the mental plane, and if it went into a spiritual plane. So I was working very deeply with sound, and I couldn't impose that upon these other musicians. I couldn't insist that they've all got to start listening in this other way and becoming initiators, getting deeply into sound and everything, and just leave them as they were. But it was obvious that I could no longer use these instruments playing with those people. And it got to the point where I thought, maybe I shouldn't even be taking them to clubs. And we go to Ronnie Scott's club, and I think, who's coming here to be enlightened? I've got bells and these religious things that are all very spiritual, but they're not coming for that. They're coming for entertainment, So I had to, it was a real crisis. What am I going to do? So I realised I've got to follow my heart. I've got to stop playing with everyone. And as I say, I had bookings that went through to sometime in 1974. So I honoured all those commitments. But then I did stop playing with everybody, and I wrote about that. Well, I used to be invited to write articles for various magazines on the avant-garde scene, and I would talk about my work and how I'd been led into this direction as a result of my kind of spiritual gifts. And it wasn't anything, it just, I had to go with it. I had a choice of going with it or forgetting it or giving up on it. And I just wasn't much of a choice. So then I got a job as a council gardener, because I felt, to earn the money and everything, and I thought that's the least damaging to planet Earth. I'm not making bombs and guns or bullets or whatnot. I'm creating beautiful flowers that help people feel good about life and that. So I enjoyed that, and luckily I worked at a girls' school, so I was the head gardener, so I'd have a shed just to myself. So I could spend time in there reading about things or listening to things. I mean, you weren't allowed to work in the rain, and it had a corrugated iron roof, so I would listen to the sound of the rain on the roof, and then I would play on my bench there. I would imagine I'm playing cymbals, or to try and play with the rain. So I wanted to get nature into my sounds. So so that was about 1973 I stopped. 74 I actually stopped playing with pretty well everybody. I do the odd gig. If I was booked to do something I might do it, but basically I'd kind of retired from that world.
Okay, and when did you get your first spiritual instrument?
Right, well my father got me a gong in 1968, and that would have been, I was starting to think, what I was wanting, even from that time, even earlier, wanting to get my music into my spiritual life, because I was like top of the class in art. So then I would do paintings of these dead spirits that used to come to me, and then I did healing, and I'd do healing with the spirits. And then I thought, how can I get my music in spiritual, make it more spiritual for myself? And I used to go and listen every week, Friday night and Saturday night, to the Spontaneous Music Ensemble, and the guy there had like a dinner gong, and I think he was probably even playing it with a drumstick. It weren't even, it was just, and another guy, Jamie Muir, he had a gong, but he had it like on a stand and would play kind of rhythms on it. But when I heard this gong, I used this with my eyes shut, I suddenly thought, that's something to do with this spiritual world. That's kind of speaking to me a bit of that. So my dad got me one, and then I gradually got more of those kind of gongs and things. And then I got given, I got 2 Burmese meditation gongs from temple called Kaises, and I got a set of 3 singing bowls, and they are on permanent loan to me, and I've had them since 1971, so over 50 years. So I got them then, and gradually I got more instruments, some second hand that I would get from junk stops, and then some I got new, because I used to play in Ray Mann's shop, and he was starting to sell Chinese instruments and Indian instruments, so he would get gongs and Chinese cymbals over, and so I would listen to them and buy some of them to add into my equipment, so gradually, so as time went by, I would go to junk stores and junk shops and find different things, and then buy some stuff from Ray. There was somebody I knew in my spiritual organisation. They worked in the government, and they gave me a kind of order book, if you want, a catalogue, that's it, and of Chinese instruments, and in there were these singing bowls. So I said to Ray, can you order me some of them? He said, do you think they'll sell? I said, yeah, I think they will, yeah. You do think so? So he ordered a set, and he said, just choose the one. He ordered several sets and said, choose what you want, make yourself a set out of them all, and gradually over the years I did buy a few more from him, brand new big ones, Chinese bells and that. And then I think about early 80s I started to get, I found a shop in Islington that had some antique Japanese rin bowls, so I bought some. Then I was starting to get more Himalayan bowls and Tibetan bowls. There were places that were starting to sell them in London, and I'd met Alan Presenza at that time, who specialised. He only had Tibetan bowls and that, and he used to go out to Tibet quite regularly, and he could speak the language and things, and he played music on them and did voice stuff, and then he'd do workshops, and he'd want me to come on his workshops and just play. He'd do all the talking, and then he'd play, and then I'd do a set as well. So we did quite a few of them together. One at Ronnie Scott's, where he did both those things. So so at that point I started to get far more Tibetan ones, and some through him that he'd brought back from Tibet, and one from a very great Tibetan master, one of the very greatest masters from last century, His Holiness Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, who was one of the Dalai Lama's root teachers, and who was head of the Nyingma sect. And I've got it written with stamp with his thing and everything, where he says, I think you'll find this bowl useful. And it's an extremely rare kind of bowl called a talking bowl, and they are very rare and this one is very sacred. It has a very special spiritual energy. But in 1973, I got a phone call from a yogi who'd come from Tibet, and he said he'd been asked to give me this symbol. And it was a couple of days before my 25th birthday, so I arranged to meet him, and we chatted this and that and the other, and he eventually got this symbol out and he struck it, and it was like, wow, I could not believe it. I just saw this great big flash of silver white light, and again with my eyes shut, I'm thinking, how do they get that light into this lump of metal? This is... Anyway, so then he said, do you like it? I said, yeah. He said, well, it's yours. He said, well, how much are you kind of... No. This is a sacred tradition. Money shouldn't change hands, you know. If you want to contribute to my fare back to Tibet, that's fine. But this is for you. I've been asked to give it to you. And it was made by his master in the Nyingma sect. And that's one of the most powerful instruments I've ever heard before or since of that type. And that really changed. That was a very powerful influence in my life and upon my music. And that was I mean, again, I couldn't use that playing with these improvisers. They wouldn't have... I mean, I don't know what it would have done to them. Probably wouldn't have done anything, actually. But for me, it was a very sacred thing, and extremely... And it had these extra powers. It wasn't just an instrument, you know. It did do things to my consciousness and that. And I remember that Evan Parker did a bit of a trick on me one time. He was playing his latest album with Paul Litton, duo, and Paul Litton was like a percussionist, and it was the slam band Crash School of Percussion. So this music's going on, and the track ends, and then on comes this Tibetan symbol, and I can tell the consciousness behind it is I can hear. I know what the level of thinking, and I'm thinking, if that's Paul Litton, I'm going to have to take back everything I've ever said about him, because this is a very spiritual. And then the Tibetan horns came in. It's like, he's put a Tibetan record on. After him and Paul, he's slipped this one in, because my eyes are shut. I haven't noticed, but I did notice within seconds of hearing. Oh, wait a minute! The consciousness behind the sound, and the consciousness within the sound. So yeah, so those sacred sounds for me are my world. I could say that all opened up. I wouldn't mind getting antique stuff. I wouldn't mind buying brand new stuff. I wasn't hung up about it, but I'd take whatever I could use.
What venues did you perform at during this time? But that also includes festivals. You know, obviously that's a venue, isn't it? So.
Yeah, well, still being in the avant-garde scene, I was often involved with international festivals at Ronnie Scott's Club or various other places. The ICA, that was one. I would do solo concerts there, and I also sometimes play with other musicians, but I did start my kind of solo career around that time. And then in 73 I was doing a recording with Overy Lodge, and I ended up doing a solo. It was totally unplanned or anything, you know. Things weren't going well in the studio, and I thought, I've got to go home today feeling that I've done something. So everybody had gone up to the listening booth, so I thought, I'm just going to play. So I did, and I went up there, and as I came through the door, they said, we got that. And I said, what? I said, Robert Fripp could tell you something was about to go down, so he told the guy to record it, so we've got it. So I thought, wow, really? Amazing, you know. And it came out on the album because there hadn't been enough stuff on it. So totally, you know, if they'd said to me, I would like you to do a solo for the album, I'd have probably tried to come up with something really complicated because of all the other drummers and everything, because of comparison and all that. But this was just natural, you know. And then I've done mostly that, you know, because a lot of people, I mean, percussionists and that, they go, can't understand how you do this really slow stuff and spacey stuff. I can't do it. I can't. You know, I'm busy. I'm used to being, you know, you do this amazing stuff. You know, and thought, well, this is how I am. I'm not doing it to be complicated or cleverer than anybody else. I'm just trying to follow the spiritual stuff in my heart and that. So I would play churches, spiritual centres, my own spiritual centre. I think about 1978 might be the first time I got to do anything there. So I'd do a few gigs there and at Theosophical Society, spiritualist churches, and then gigs that put on people in the avant-garde jazz and that, or something that was different, and I'd be in that kind of different thing. People that were running a new age centre where they might want meditation music, because I used to call my stuff, I thought, what do I call this? Altered consciousness music, meditation music, spiritual music, you know, because at that time nobody else was doing it. So I was trying to think, what could I call it? So I'd just go wherever I was asked. One guy, he wanted me to play for his wedding, you know, after his wedding. So I went to his house, set up and played. Didn't even get paid. I think he collected me, drove me home. That was it. And then I played for his wedding. I'm still friends with him. He used to work in a bookshop. That's how I got to know him. Because I'd spend a lot of time in the bookshop and I'd be reading the stuff and think, nah, it's not quite. And thinking, oh, this is good. Yeah, I like the way the guy writes. I'll buy this.
But I mean, you played at the Glastonbury Festival.
Yeah, played Glastonbury, played Mind, Body, Spirit when it started for quite a number of years till I moved out of London. Then because of the stuff of getting all my gear up there, and in those days probably didn't get paid, so it got to a point where I didn't go so often, and then it just got worse anyway. That whole thing got to a point where you didn't get paid, you got put in some stupid place to play, like a restaurant or something. So, you know, I mean, just like no respect for what you were doing or anything. It was just you were on. They could advertise that they were going to have music and people talking and workshops and da-di-da. But so a lot of that is not what it used to be. But in the early days, you'd get treated decently.
And Gaunt's House was a local.
Yeah, it was a local place. I think sometime in the 80s he decided, he was running like a school there, and he suddenly decided he could run it as a new age type place, or he was interested to try it and see. So he had I don't know, he had a week on or a weekend or something, but anyway, something where we had a few musicians, and so I got to play there. And then, you know, I'd get given a free room and free food, and I got paid, and I could take my wife and kids and they'd all get free food and a free accommodation. But now if I do it there, I'm lucky if I don't get the accommodation, don't get free food, and don't get paid very much. You know, in those days they could say, how much do you want to charge? And I'd say, and they'd take their percentage. But now it's got to, right, we're paying everybody 20 quid or 60 quid. And so it could be some stupid person who knows hardly anything about anything, who's just trying to get their first foot on the ladder, and they get 5 people to the workshop who complain, say it's a load of rubbish, and they get paying the same as me, who's got a sold out workshop where everybody's going, wow, that was brilliant. And I get the same as some complete nobody, and now they just get the nobodies, because anybody who's anybody doesn't want to, you know, you having to basically pay to go and do it. It's not the idea. The idea is that you get something out of it. It's your means of making a living. Yeah, so there was some local places, like kind of new age centres, and all over the place, and as I say, spiritualist churches and all over the place. Yeah, I've never been hustling for gigs. I never advertise myself or go asking people. I just go on word of mouth. So every now and again I get, you know, Theosophical Society or Rosicrucians who ring up and say, oh, we'd like you to come and do one of your lyric slideshows and talk about the bowls or whatever. And so I go, yeah, all right, tell me what you want, and I'll do it with a range of price and tell me the day and everything. So it's just like that. You know, I still don't try and get work.
Okay, and what do you think was the best venue you've played at?
Well, I think that was something quite recently. That was at the White Eagle Lodge at the White Temple in Newlands, Hampshire, because it was the very last thing that ever happened there. And I was doing a solo concert in the main temple, and it was full of people. I had a lot of people there, and it was a wonderful atmosphere. I mean, I felt that when I'd done recording there, I'd been in contact with the temple angel asking if it's all right to play there, and I wanted to set up a certain place. I asked them, is it all right if I set up here? And I rang the top people up and said, it would be all right if I set up there. And they said, do what you like, love, you know, da-di-da. So I was aware that the angels were able to get very close, so it was a very, very special gig. You know, it went really, really well. I had other people on doing music, but I never got to any of them. But other people did. Some people I knew came to my thing, then they'd gone off to these others, and then they came. When I saw them later, they were saying, "Oh, it was terrible. You know, I'm glad I came for your thing. That was brilliant." But other stuff was, you know, they're all nobodies basically. you know, which is okay. I mean, I was a nobody, probably still am. So, but that was a very special event. And I think where was the other one? There was somewhere, I think it might have been at Mind, Body and Spirit at Olympia. I'm not sure. No, it might have been an Oak Dragon camp. Yeah, there was at the time of the harmonic convergence, and I was aware of very special energies and beings around who were wanting to help planet Earth and everything. And so I felt what I was doing was part of that very much, and we were all getting blessed by these extra beings that were on inner levels. So that was another special one. But that last temple one was very special. It was the last musical thing that ever happened in it, and they knocked it down.
Right.
And they built another one now, but on the same spot. But that temple, I was there when they dedicated that temple. I was there. I started going to the place nine years before they even built, before I'd even heard about the temple. So I was there. I sang in the choir for the temple opening and the dedication, and I did various things in the temple. You know, did a few concerts, but that last one was very special.
And although this time period is a solo career, what was your best collaboration?
Ooh.
Who was your favourite person to have played with? I suppose is another way of putting it, but you know.
Yeah, I don't know really. I mean, I just try and get on with everyone. I really enjoyed. I did a duet with Evan Parker, probably 1971, and that was like I consider him a genius and an innovator and a very original player, and he's a nice guy. So and it was supposed to be a trio, but they had a power cut. There was a strike, so the electric guitarist couldn't play. So he played on an acoustic guitar, and we did a duo. So we hadn't even rehearsed we hadn't rehearsed anyway. But so it ended up doing a duo, and I did record that, and it did come out on an album years and years later on an Italian label. So that was a good one. And then the guy I used to play with, Mike Sullivan, when I started off in this whole area, the whole area of avant-garde jazz, I used to enjoy working with him. And then in this area, David Hikes, I did a duet with him. He's like, used to run the harmonic choir in New York, and so he does overtone singing of the Mongolian type of style and a kind of Western version. So he's very good with his voice, and he's very deeply spiritual person and into sound. So we did a few performances as a duo, and that was really good. I can't think. I mean, my basic problem is that no one else is working in the same way as me. So the only way I can really get on is if I work on my own. You know.
Yeah, I just was worth a question.
There were some with the family that were nice when you and your sister and mother used to play Tibetan bells, and you'd have a few bowls, maybe jump bowls and water bowls, and I'd have a basic. Give you all a piece of paper that would say, right, you know, we'll start like this, and then play the water bowls, and then these bowls and those bowls, but no, you know, it was all improvised, so we hadn't already said after 5 minutes do this or that. You were free to do whatever you wanted, and those I really enjoyed, and I think one of those was very special. We had people at the Oak Dragon camp that were saying, wow, that was one of the most amazing things I've ever heard, you know. Because it was kind of real, it's live, because it's happening there and then. There was no rehearsal, and some of you have never probably even played the instruments or anything else. But they were really good. I enjoyed those.
Okay, and what was your favourite album created during this time?
Well, Deep Peace is a classic for me, and a bestseller, and also Chakra Healing. That I felt that was an important album. I felt that I'd come back to make that album, but they're all different in their own way. I try to make each one original and you know, of its own. For the last one that I've recorded, I'm happy, you know, I like, but I haven't even put it out yet. And that's a kind of real deep listening thing. That's very, very demanding on the listener, I would say. But Deep Peace isn't. That's you know, that's sold about somewhere between over 30,000, and in my field, if you sell 200, that's a bestseller. as it was with classical music at the time. You know, you wouldn't only, it would be rare if somebody sold thousands. If it got on the radio, you know, I've got on television programmes saying loads of people were buying it, it suddenly caught on. But on the whole, you wouldn't expect to sell masses. So Deep Peace was a very important album, a turning point. Funnily enough, the guy who owned the studio was two brothers. He rang me up yesterday, after 40 odd years, you know, and was. Yeah, he was saying, oh, it was amazing when we had you up there. It was like you were a total pioneer. No one else was doing anything like what you were doing. You know, all those years ago, he was saying, you know, so yeah, I remember you being there. You know. And then it turned out he got into Buddhism after I'd left, and he kind of cleaned his act, I suppose you could say. He's married now, got kids, grandchild. But it was very funny hearing from somebody from all those years, and him being so enthusiastic about, oh, it's great to talk to you again, and never forget that recording session. He probably did think, what the hell is this, when I first turned up? What is all this? Because they'd be, well, it's like a big studio recording, Ozzy Osbourne, Queen, and all that. I turn up.
What was the inspiration to make your own instruments, the creations, the inventions that you made?
Right. It just kind of happened. I was told, I became an endorsee for Paiste about 1973. So that's the world's major producer of gongs and tuned percussion and cymbals and stuff. Well, certainly at the time they were the main one, and they had a really good name. And I was told that when you're an endorsee, you could, if you go there, they'll give you one of these tuned or disc. And I thought you could put that on the hi-hat, that could sound really nice, you know. So I got there, and they had this stack of about 5 discs, because they were the black notes on the next octave down. And they're all covered in dust, they've been on a bench for years. And he said, well, we were going to try and produce another octave lower, but by the time it got that big, it was no longer just one note. You couldn't call it a tuned disc anymore. And when you hit it with the same stick, it just went clunk because it was too big. So we've just left them there. And so he demonstrated it to me. He got one of the discs, might have been the biggest, I can't remember. And he got one of the plastic rod, and sure enough, it went clunk. But as he did that, I thought, if I can reduce the mass, keep the main circumference, but reduce the mass by cutting out some shapes, and if I did that in some harmonious shape, I wonder what it would sound like. So I spent, where I was staying in Switzerland, they had a workshop in a bunch of garages and things. So I spent about 8 hours sawing up this disc and coming up with this pattern, which I called a petal looming because it was shaped like flower petals. And it sounded amazing. It was like a whole transformation. So that started them. And then with the really big ones, and then they also gave me some offcuts. I ordered a very special big rectangle plate and told them the sizes, dimensions I wanted, and they cut it, and I got some offcuts. And so they were quite large triangles, and some of these cutouts I'd done were other triangles. So I made a load of triangles that went from quite small, and I'd changed the pitch. So it could be 108 degrees, 120, 72 degrees, basically astrological degrees of angles. And then so then I filed them up, and then I discovered that if I put a circle on the bottom, because I had these 4 triangle offcuts from this rectangle, I kept 2 of them as the solid triangles, but then with the other one I put this little, it was about 1/4 or 1/5 of the radius, the pitch of the triangle. I put this little curve on. It changed, such a huge change to the sound. I couldn't get over it, at how much, from not that much metal removed, but then the shape had changed. And so then I made some of those different sizes, and they were really amazing. So it kind of all just happened from life, really. Wasn't anything, it just happened in that instant when he got this plastic rod out and went clunk. And then I'm suddenly thinking, wait a minute, what? And then they gave me the whole set of 5 that had been gathering dust, and I took them home, or I might have even started at this guy's house, deciding. Then I would work out what's the diameter of the disc, and I would turn that into a number, and then I would turn that into connection with a planet, and then I'd think, what planet do I want to put with that planet, and that would be another number, and that would be the number of petals on the thing, you see. So it was all quite intuitive. Like, it wasn't it wasn't scientific or anything. It was more the science of astrology and those kind of things. And I must say, I was happy with the sounds they all made, but whether I'd have been happy if I'd chosen a different number of petals, I don't know. But yeah, so the little ones I call UFOMs, unidentified flying objects of music. I had a few guys around last year buying some of my stuff, and they were like gongs and bowl players, and when I struck them fingers, they both were like, wow, what is that? Wow. Oh, I invented these. Wow, incredible. It's a bit like a ding show, but except it's even more like bang, real sort of way. So I think I sold them a load of them. I kept some for myself, the original first one I ever made. And yeah. So I invented the Petalumians and the Pyrohermeses and the Pyrotohermeses and the Trianguhermeses. So they're all basically triangles. Some are straight triangles, some triangles with a curve on them on the bottom, and then other ones that were designed like that but also designed to rotate, to spin. So I called them Pyrotohermeses, and Hermeses is a him and her, so they're not, so this yeah, could be either sex, not you know. Yeah.
Okay, this next question, I've written it down. It's a bit unclear exactly how I've written it as such, but what I'm basically asking is, when you're performing, are you meditating or focused on picking the right instrument for creating the music for other people to meditate to the music that you're creating?
Well, it's I'm doing many things. I'm a musician, so I will kind of have an eye or an ear on where the audience is and what they need, what they need, and communicating with them. I will approach my instruments as if they're musical instruments. Other times I can approach them as if they're sacred instruments. So if I feel that I need a particular energy, let's say I need a Mogasiddhi, and I've got a bowl that's tuned into a Mogasiddhi, I will know that at some point I need to introduce a Mogasiddhi into the whole thing. And then, so there will be those instruments. So then I would work, so the way I work with harmony is that if I have a bowl that's to do, let's say it's to do with really being very peaceful, then if other instruments I want to play with it, they've got to be connected with this peace as well, unless I'm wanting to change it or have a dynamic contrast. And then the other way of doing it is the normal harmony, is what sounds go with that sound. So that's to do with just sound and music and just what the ears hear. But there will be other levels of working with these things, and I'll shift between those as according to the moment, how it is in the now, because I've been an improvising musician since 1968. That's what I'm used to. I'm used to having just turning up and not knowing what I'm going to do, even for the first idea. I might have done an improvisation at home when I had this instrument set up in my living room, and I might have done it at 3 a.m. or something, and I might think, oh, I'd like to do that one at a gig or that one as a recording session, but I'll only have a skeleton kind of thing. I won't make a note of everything I played. I'll just say, all right, I started with single sounds, then I moved into, kind of groups, and I moved into this, and I moved into that area, and these kind of sounds. So different bowls from different regions will have different sound qualities, and so I will shift between them. And then I am in a meditative state of consciousness while I'm playing, and I'm also in what would be called a shamanic state of consciousness, as I was a trance medium, and these dead spirits would speak through me, so I can channel, or I can be a bridge between this world and beings on other worlds. And so, like I said, at that harmonic convergence, I was like acting as a bridge between the angel beings and the beings from other planets, and what they wanted to bring to humanity, and I was trying to create music that would help them to bring that energy to the crowd, to the audience. So there isn't only one way that I do it. It depends on, I try and work in all these different ways and consider all those ways. You know, so there will be certain.
Yeah, I think I was probably asking the question because some of the albums are deliberately aimed at people that want to meditate, so they can use that music to meditate. So that's what I think I was trying to ask, whether you feel that in a performance you're meditating as well, or whether you can't do both things at the same time, so therefore you're just picking stuff that should help someone's spirit.
No, well, I've had a few times, I've had people have tested my brain, and it's perfectly balanced between left and right hemispheres, so I'm pretty good at doing several things at once, or being able to being one part of the brain which is all very mystical and spiritual and weird and way out, and being in another part that's totally here, you know. So like I'm a musician, but I put my own central heating in, I did a loft conversion, and you know, I'm quite good with my hands and all that. So whereas a lot of musicians wouldn't be able to put central heating in, you know, they're just musicians, that is it. They're not very good at anything else. And a lot of spiritual people, they don't even know how to change a light bulb. Some of the, you know, I've known people who are proper electricians, and they've said they ring them up 3 a.m. saying, this light bulb's gone, could you come and change it for us? I'm thinking, oh, come on, you know. But I suppose either they think they're too special to change a light bulb, or they really don't know how to do it. How do we spin the room round to get this? How does this thing go in there? Do you spin it or what? Yeah, so I mean, the chakra healing, obviously that is specifically about chakras, and I wanted to do an album for that. Deep Peace, actually, I designed it to work through certain chakras and things, and some friends of mine from the White Eagle Lodge, I gave them the album to listen to. I didn't say anything about what it was about, but the two of them, they both got it exactly. Oh, and I was working with the throat chakra, and they said to me, oh, then it went into the heart chakra, didn't it? I said, that's right, you know. So they totally got it. But they are people trained in a similar thing. I don't expect everybody to get that, but so I try and make it a nice piece of music. So even if you know nothing about any of this other stuff, you'll still have an enjoyable experience, and the healing energy's in the music, so it will help you to relax as well. And that I've had people who say they got a little 7-year-old son, and he said he asked me to play him chakra healing every night when he's going to sleep. Yeah. And I think, wow, I'd love to meet him in a few years. He'd be an unusual kid. Crikey. You know.
Okay, I'm sure we've mentioned some of this already, but I was going to ask, what instruments did you use for this music? And I've kind of put in brackets in brief, because I know there's thousands of instruments, so I don't want to be like every single little tiny bell this big. And where were they sourced?
Right, well, like I say, when I got into singing bowls, that's when I realised that there's a world in this one bowl. You know, it's like it does one thing, and it does that really well, and that's it. And some are just like bells, they're just bells off a shelf, they don't mean nothing, and other ones, they've got special energies that have been given to them. Either someone's spent a whole lifetime meditating with them, so that energy is just there, or they've taken it to a lama who has consecrated that bowl to a very particular deity or something, and so that energy is there. So if I'm going to work with it, I have to work with that energy, I have to work with the way it's been worked with before. And then other ones, I just know they're working with certain chakras and doing certain things, and no one's used it in that way before, but I can use it now. So there is the definition there of instruments that have been used for certain things, instruments that could be used for certain things. So then some of those very sacred, rare instruments I got from Alan Presents. As I say, he was going out to Tibet, and I didn't even ask him. He just turned up one time saying to me, I've got you this. He wanted some instruments of mine. He wanted to swap them, and he said, oh, I've got this panic bowl for you. So I thought, panic bowl? I'm trying to do meditation music. He said, well, no. So I said, oh, all right, Alan, didn't want to make a fuss. I said, okay. And then he got back with the instruments, and then ran back a few days over the weekend saying, I'm terribly sorry, Frank. The guy who's supposed to be bringing the panic bowl, he's turned up with some cheap German imitation rubbish, and I haven't got it. So I said, okay. 6 months went by. And it was just after I got this talking bowl from this very great Tibetan master. And he rings up on that night and says, Frank, the guy's turned up with the panic bowl. He's stood on the doorstep, quivering like a lump of jelly, and he's just saying, look, please, just take it. Don't ask me anything. Just take it, please. So he said, so I've got your panic bowl. And that's for exorcisms. So I'm not surprised he was in a state with it. And I was listening to it and play. I thought that's really good for exorcisms, you know. And then Alan told me traditionally they use them for exorcisms in Tibet. So I got a few from him. And then there were people that there was a shop called Frontiers in Portobello Road. It was a friend of mine called Melodicium, who's he's an old friend, and he became manager at this shop. And so he would ring me up and say, we just got half a dozen box loads of singing bowls, and if you want to come and have first pickings. So I'd get down there and be 4 or 5 hours going through the lot. I'd say that's correct. That's rubbish, you can't use that. This is bad, that bad. That one's musical, that's good. That one works with water. This one's, very good. I would kind of grade them all for him. And then out of them, then my ex-wife used to buy and sell bowls to make money to go on courses. So I'd be choosing ones for her. So I might find 12 heart chakra bowls. Well, I think I can't take all 12 because some other people there might be some there for other people intended to help for them, And so I'd ask her how many does she want, and if there's one that I want to work with, I've got 12 heart chakra bowls, so if there's one that suddenly I'm aware that it would work for a certain type of healing with the heart chakra, I'd get that for myself. So I'd get some for myself in that time, some for her, and then just kind of go through the lot. So that's where I got quite a lot that way, but then he stopped working there, and the new guy was not, I turned up one time and there was a very rare bowl on the floor. It was very shallow and had lots of decorations on it, like peacocks and things. And some guy came in and was buying it, and I thought, he's just coming off the street. I know nothing about, and they're selling him, So I said, listen, mate, if you get any unusual bowls, could you put them aside for me to get a first look at, And then the next time I went, he'd got these unusual bowls that were quite shallow, had a dimple. They kind of came like that, and then had a dimple in the middle, and I could see they work with water, and they are wonderful with water, and they sound like water spirits, and so I call them water spirit bowls. And you have 3, and I thought, well, I'll take 2, but then I realised that they kind of musically went as a group, so I thought I'll have to buy all 3. I was hoping I could leave one for someone else, but I'm sure he brought more of them as the years went by. But that I got a few more like that, a few more special ones, but they used to just get boxes sent over. They didn't go and choose any themselves. They just had a dealer out there. So it'd be like that. And then one time I was at Mind Body Spirit. It was my birthday in the week I was performing there, and there was a shop selling singing bowls. So I thought I'll treat myself, so I went on my birthday. He said we sold out of bowls. So I thought, oh great. He said, however, there is one bowl, and it's my own personal bowl, and you're the only person on the planet I would be prepared to let it go to. So I thought, okay, so I played it, and it was beautiful. It turns out it's a heart chakra bowl, and it's 12th century, and it's actually tuned into the Master Jesus. When I got home and meditated deeply with it, it's tuned into Jesus. So I thought, well, he's my main master, so that makes sense. So at the time I was thinking, what's Jesus got to do with Tibet? I must have lost it. I must have gone 1 over the 8 here. But then years later, I was reading that Jesus had gone to India and Tibet. Nicholas Roerich exposed about many people from the 1920s. So suddenly I thought, that's okay. Obviously that whoever was working with it was working with the Master Jesus, and that's, that's a particular, more to do with Tantra or the Vajrayana form of Buddhism, which is more magical and will be connected with this inner life, which is far more potent and powerful, and that's what interested me about some of these bowls. But I've got bowls that are just bowls, and I've got all kind of things, and some I might have picked up at junk stops, some I've just wherever I've been. We were driving along one time, I was going to do a charity gig for a Tibetan lot, and I passed a shop and I said, hey, there's some bowls in the window, let's get in. I went in there and I bought some from there. And I remember I thought I mustn't buy too many because my wife would want to buy some, and my little daughter came up and said, Dad, there's one in the window. So I thought, oh dear, I don't know. So I got it and brought it through, and the woman at the counter said, the guy who sold that said it was something to do with the stomach or something. So I played it and it went straight to the solar plexus. I thought, that would be good for healing right. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to buy it, whether she'll have to buy something else. So there'll be all sorts of situations, but And even some that I've bought online, and I'll, if they've got a good recording of it, I can check, I can listen to that, and I can get an idea of what's going on. It's only when I get it in my hands that I can work out whether there's anything deeper going on. But that I've done some that way. But on the most of them, I would have probably got from the shop frontiers. If from the 1980s and onwards, that's 40 years ago. Some I have got other bowls tuned into other spiritual masters, but that would have been the master of the person who owned the bowl previously. But that's for people who work in that way with sound, which is not by any means is that normal.
Okay. Which instruments will you never sell?
Well, that one of the two of the Master Jesus, I'm highly unlikely to sell. At the moment, I've had to sell instruments for remortgaging and stuff, but I haven't sold any of my healing instruments. I have sold some instruments that are particularly good for ululation, for certain techniques, ululation, working with water and things like that. I have sold some of those, but I haven't sold any healing bowls yet, and they would be probably towards the last ones that I ever sell. And because then I have to tell people how to work with it, even if they choose not to. At least I've done my bit and explained what the energy is and how to treat the bowl and everything. So, yeah.
What about the...
I'll never sell. I'd never sell the Tibetan symbol that I got. That is extremely magical. I might leave that to one of my grandchildren or something, or I don't know. I'll think about it deeply nearer the time when I've been given 3 months to live or something. But there are some bowls that are far more deeply linked with my own spiritual path that obviously I would be loath to sell, and that have helped me through my spiritual path. And there'll be others that have other things going on. I mean, I recently sold 2 of the antique Japanese temple bells that I got in 1973, and they were in those early days when I was studying what they did, and they both did things on the etheric and on the astral and they were linked to particular zodiac signs, but I did decide I could let them go, and I didn't say anything to the people who bought them about what they were tuned into, because I didn't think I knew the guy wouldn't. I'd already put a bowl out for him to look at that was tuned into his sun sign, and he totally passed it. It didn't mean anything to him, so I know that it wouldn't mean anything to him. He might be able to remember what I've said and all that, but he doesn't live in that world. So, yeah. So it's just a question of being responsible, really, for any that are got particular powers, There's like an American guy in this field who considers himself one of the world's leading experts, and he's talking about me and my book and my bowls, and he said, yeah, anybody who gets some of your bowls, lucky you don't blow their head off.
And what method do you use to detect spiritual connections in specific instruments, or what instruments have been specifically...
Well, it's a natural gift that I have, and like I say, this Tibetan who came to work with me, he initiated me into certain ways, but it is really a certain form of clairvoyance. I've had that since I was a baby, and so it's just a question of I just look to see what it's doing. So I would look on the astral plane to see if the bowl produced a particular colour, whereas other people trying to find a link between colour and sound, they might do it in a different way. So I've been at places where they've got loads of theosophists, and I've said to them, right, well, do you want to try and get a colour for this bowl? Do you want an easy one, a difficult one? Oh, yeah, quite difficult, okay. I said, I'm going to tell you nothing about it, just going to play it, and at the end we'll see what colours you got. And that was obvious then that they'd been doing it in a different way. So the bowl has a warm sound. So they thought warm colour. So they thought one of them got orange and one got blue. The actual bowl creates green, which is a very cool, cold colour. And they didn't get that at all, So it's quite interesting. Whereas another place, nobody could see the colour, but for another bowl, and that bowl's tuned into Venus, which rules Taurus and Libra. But they went on to describe the kind of meditation they went into listening to the bowl, and it was all to do with Libra being perfectly balanced, very still, very peaceful, and Libra is to do with It's the scales. It's to do with being balanced and centered. So there was one who did work. It was to do with the third eye chakra, and one of them did get that it was to do with fire. But it's all to do with what people, if you've got the gift or not. But like I say, it's just, I would look to see what colour. I wouldn't imagine what colour. I wouldn't think, like I say, cold sound, cold colour, warm sound, warm. I don't listen to. I don't even listen to the bowl really. I don't think I'm on another level. I'm trying to see. And I leave it until it suddenly comes, and then I see the colour, and I know, I don't have any doubt about it. I can see the precise shade, and so I can write down, okay, that bowl works with green, works with this chakra, this planet, whatever, this master, whatever is in it, I will normally find it. And if it's not there, I won't find it. Which was funny, there was one time I was having a lot of trouble trying to work out this bowl, and then I realised it was a bowl to do with Gyan Yoga, which is to do with question and trying to find yourself. So of course there's no answer. It's like you're looking, who am I, what am I? And so that's why I wasn't getting any answers. And then in another bowl I was kind of getting, I was getting the idea that I was in a boat and I was floating on a river and da-di-da. And then that was to do with a chakra between the solar plexus and the heart called the Hrit Padma chakra. And that's connected with the unconscious, the subconscious. So of course, very hard to get conscious about what this bowl's doing when it's to do with the unconscious. But because I got that floating on water, that helped me to, I thought, this is more the subconscious. And I knew where it was affecting me. And when I read out about the chakra at that point, it's not normally listed because it's not one of the 7 main ones, I found that it was all exactly to do with the notes that I'd made of what the bowl did to you. Ba-bum.
Okay, and what inspired you to focus a huge portion of your life to this?
I suppose the fact no one else was doing it. It's just natural for me to do it, and so I like to follow nature. People quite like what I do. I was doing a lot of sound healings and workshops and stuff, and so I was able to make some sort of a living at it all. But basically I just love it, and the bowls have come to me, so I have some sort of link with them and I'm able to work with them. And there are certain rare branches of Tibetan Buddhism to do with the Vajrayana, as I say, where it's like that. A lama or a monk might get a particular object. It might be made from a seashell or something, carved and dedicated to a particular being. And that will be attracted to them, and they'll be attracted to it, and it's meant to be with them. And so it will be with them. It won't be stolen from them because it's the intention, life that has the intention that they're going to work with that particular thing. And so it's like that. I work with these things. I'm grateful for receiving them, and if I'm able to work with them, understand how to work with them, then that's what I do, and I love doing that. It's just natural. It's something that's been unveiled to me, been revealed to me, and I'm able to do it, so I do it. It's not anything I set out to do. It's just, it's not. There might be other musicians when I was doing avant-garde, they might have all considered I was absolutely mental. What's he on about colours and because it's just not their world. It's not their way of working with sound. They're musicians and. They're used to playing improvised music where you haven't got any thoughts about any of this stuff. You're just listening and you hear on a trombone, you hear on the guitar, and that's it. You're in that world, right there, right now, and you ain't got time to worry about what does that note mean or what does this sound. You're not interested in meaning. A lot of those people don't believe that life's got any meaning at all. But I'm in this area where things have a tremendous meaning and they can help to change your life. So it's a question of working with those things, either with a room full of people or on albums and stuff, and healing.
Okay, what research would you do to help create your albums?
Well, with the chakra album, obviously I did do some research on chakras to work out how I could put that into music. So for instance, there's a yoga called Nad yoga in India. That's the yoga of sound, and in that yoga you try and hear the inner sound, the inaudible sound. So no one else can hear it. You can't even hear it yourself with your ears, but you hear this inner sound. So it is said that you can't do that until you've reached the level of the heart chakra. So then I realised that I would have mostly struck bowls for below the heart chakra and mostly stroke bowls for above the heart chakra. So that's one example. So it would go on like that. So I would take indications from these different things. So with the sacral chakra, which is the second one, that's to do with the energy of the etheric moving, spreading through the body. So I would use more of a range of bowls where you would have experienced the kind of space between the different notes, like a kind of ratios, the spaces between the notes, and have the sense that it was occupying this space. Whereas for the root chakra, it was more rhythmical and just far fewer bowls being played and all working on that root chakra. So basically every chakra would have bowls that worked on that chakra, but they would be kind of camouflaged by other things. Otherwise other people who are a bit unscrupulous might think, oh, what's the chakra for sex? Right, I'll play that one and get our girlfriend round and make her listen to this, and we'll be all right tonight. So I had to work in different ways, but I do a lot of research and thinking and pondering, but it would be based upon bowls that did work on those chakras. But then the musical concept would be to do with the energy of that chakra and things. So that's one example. Otherwise, it would just be improvisations. But unless I was working with a particular, wanting to do a meditation on a particular deity, or some of my bowls are connected with particular visualizations, certain meditations, so I would just work with them. If I was working in a room full of people, I would guide them through the meditation, so that they're in tune with it. But I don't do that with the healing. I don't say anything with the healing. But that's so I wouldn't do a lot of research as such. I might spend time trying to improve myself. I might sit there thinking, let's make a list of opposites. So fast, slow, loud, soft, sharp, soft, stroke bowls, struck bowls, rapidly struck, very slowly struck, lots of space, not much space, and just trying to think of as many opposites as possible. This is a cold sound, this is a very warm sound, and then when I come to do an improvisation, I'm thinking that might feed in to if I feel the music wants to go in a certain direction, like it wants to get a bit more cold and focused, I know that I need to start bringing them bowls in now, and then I'll come back to this lot and da-de-da. So I'll move through certain areas of bowls to do with what's happening on the inner level with the meditation. But there would be times when I'm doing cerebral thinking, research, pondering, exploring, but when I come to play, I'm just playing on the whole.
Okay. What recording studios did you use?
Well, mostly, as I say, Music al Fresco. Oliver's, he did a lot of recording for that. There was a guy. Oh yeah. I did some recording for a guy called Tony Doig down in Glastonbury, who had his own record label to do meditation music, and there was an album that was to do Atlantis, and I did the music for that. And him and his brother had a group that was called, I can't remember now, but they had a band, and the guy who recorded them got in touch with me years later. He was starting to get into all this, and he wanted to put out his own meditation music, and so he got in touch with me and offered me to go down and record in his studio for 5 days after Christmas. One year when he was a bit quiet, he'd inherited the studio from his father, and he used to specialise in what are called library albums, and that's where you get jazz musicians, people who are just invent stuff, come up with stuff, and then it was only available to libraries. So that was, if you're a filmmaker, you would have access to library music. So you think, oh, I think some jazz would go well here, or singing bowls are good here, and you'd get these albums. But the general public were not supposed to be able to buy them or have access to them. So he invited me to use his studio for 5 days. And I said to him, is it soundproof? He said, no, it's all right, they're very quiet around here. And as it happened, when I turned up, they were demolishing the house next door, so there was a bulldozer going all day. And so he said, we'll have to record at night when they go home. So that was okay. I did enough material there for 10 or 12 albums. At the White Eagle Lodge in the Temple, I did a recording session there with a very top engineer, and we used the very latest recording equipment called UHJ surround sound with a sound-filled microphone. That was all top end at the time, and it was only one microphone, so I couldn't mix it or adjust it at all. It would record whatever I recorded, whatever I did, that was it. If I should have played that louder or quieter, forget it. You can't change it. And so we did enough stuff there for 10 or 12 albums, and we mostly recorded at night because there was trains down the road from there, and also it was a headquarters, so people would be coming in and out of the office and to and from the building for healing or whatever, sit on healing groups. So we mostly did our recording at night when it was absolutely quiet, and the heating wasn't on, so we wouldn't have. It was just in January, it was freezing cold, this great big huge temple and freezing cold. The recording engineer's right, he had an electric bar thing in his room, but me, and one of my pieces I had to record just in my underpants because I was moving so much around, you get all the sound of the clothes. It's really freezing. And it was a long piece, about 50 minutes long. So some were like that. Other times, what have I done? Oh, there was another place that I did some recording. That was for a spa place called Lush. And they were doing certain spa things based on a certain theme. So they were working with sound. This woman had these tuning forks, and so they wanted to compose music, and they'd have folk music, and they'd have a guy there who would kind of bring folk songs into it all, and then they'd have me to add some of my sounds for other parts. So in this, to do with sound, there's a section which is just singing bowls, and I'm using it in a very healing way, and it was recorded again in surround sound, so the person listening to it would hear just the same as someone lying in the bowls with the bowls around their head. So there was but that only was recordings for their particular label and the project I was doing there. But so otherwise, I think that's the main thing. Just whatever, if somebody offers, a studio or something, I'll take it up. But I've done quite a few in the temple, and they had very good acoustics there. I haven't been in the new temple, so I don't know what that's like. I have a suspicion they may not be so good, but in the old one they were very good, and of course the energies in the old one were absolutely divine. And I just say I did enough in a few days, about 10 albums.
Where was the recording studio for Deep Peace then?
That was Ridge Farm Studios. I don't know where that is. It might be in Sussex somewhere. I mean, I knew a woman, she might still be alive, I don't know, but I knew a woman at the time, and she was French. She somehow knew these people who owned the studio, and she told them, I don't know, she came up with some sort of stuff that made them think, oh, we've got to record this guy. I don't know how real or true it was, but she got them interested. And then she got another friend of hers, a woman called Arabella Churchill, who was some relative of Winston Churchill's, and she paid £400 for the recording session, and I always intended to try and pay that back, but she's been dead a long time anyway. But I didn't get around to that. Didn't manage it. So that was done in a proper professional studio. But the engineer who did it the first time didn't do a very good job. So a lot of the recording barely there. So I had to come back and do it all again.
Same studio,
yeah. Different engineer.
Yeah.
And that engineer, he trained the two owners of the studio how to do the engineering, and they did it in 8-hour shifts between the three of them, and I did a 36-hour recording session all in one go with no sleep and no food and just water and a temperature of 102. But it was a great, and I had people doing black magic on me, because the two owners, the brothers, they had a sister, and she wanted to come down. She was an artist, but she was also fancied herself as a pop singer, and she'd been working 6 months on a 2-minute single, you know. So she said, I want to come down to do some work. And they said, no, we've got this guy. She said, oh, no, come on, blood's thick in the water. You need to get rid of him. And Billy, who rang me just yesterday, as it happens, he said, no, I think, you know, Frank's been here once before and we didn't do a good job. You know, I think this time we should definitely do it. And so then there was these people doing black magic to do with her. I don't know if it was her. I didn't bother who it was, but they were trying to make me feel bad and that I shouldn't record, that I should in fact move out. But I just said, I'm here working for the Great White Brotherhood, and if you don't like it, have a word with them. And that it finished at that very instant. Forget about black magic, over. And then, funnily enough, they'd had Ozzy Osbourne had been in that studio recording just before me, and they were playing his latest single, and I had to ask them to stop it, because while I was setting my instruments, it was not the right energy for my service to the Great White Brotherhood. I don't think Ozzy Osbourne had the same inspiration.
Okay, and the final question, which I've asked in I think all the other interviews as well, but it's the one about what lessons have you learned during that time, and obviously that is a much larger time for this period than the other two. So
well, I've certainly learned that there are many dimensions to music and sound, far more than just the physical noise that you're making. I've obviously learnt that there are many different types of music. There is bowls and gongs do not obey the rules of normal music and instruments. So the human voice, violins, brass instruments, all those normal instruments, they follow an arithmetic progression. So you can predict exactly what notes will be in that instrument. So if you have a violin and you tune the string and you pluck it, you know that will have, let's say you've tuned it to a C, you know that its next harmonic will be G, and then so on. You'll be able to predict the different harmonics which have to do with the ratio of the string. So the octave, the first harmonic in the octave, you get halfway down the string. So if you rest your finger halfway and pluck it, you will get the octave. And if you don't have just the basic string, you get the basic note, the fundamental, then the octave, then you get the fifth, then the fourth, then you get a series of 4/3, then you get a series of 8 seconds, and so on. It's all predictable. But with singing bowls, you cannot predict. Everyone's an individual. You can't predict how many overtones it's going to have, what those overtones are going to be, what the relationship they're going to be to the fundamental. Totally nothing to do with music and instruments. A very different world, you know. So I learnt that and learnt to appreciate that. And then obviously being a musician, I bring that to my singing bowl work. Being a medium, and I bring that to my spirit, to my bowl work. Being involved with spiritual healing, I bring that to my bowl work. Being an astrologer, I bring that to my bowl work in terms of feeling that instrument's tuned into this particular planet or this particular sign of the horoscope, and therefore it can be good for this, that or the other. And then with the healing, luckily the form of healing I've been trained in works on the chakras. So I will, at the beginning, people don't even tell me what's wrong with them or what they're hoping I can do for them. They just lie down. I look at their chakras and see which ones are not working properly, and then why they're not working properly. And then that will tell me, let's say the heart chakra's out. I've got 12 bowls that will work on the heart chakra. It's a question of, right, which will be the right one for the reason that their heart chakra is having trouble at the moment. You know, so I'm trying to kind of tune them in to the energy where everything is working well. It's healing, it's whole, there's a sense of wholeness. And so it's a lot to do with that, whereas a lot of people in the sound healing world don't go that deep. I tend to go very deep in everything I do. So I've learned that there are lots of levels to it, and everything's right. I mean, it's horses for courses as far as I'm concerned. You get someone, if I'm down the bus stop and someone says, what do you do? And I'm a musician. Oh, what sort of music? Oh, well, I've got these bowls from Tibet and that. Oh yeah. What's that about then? I haven't seen anybody using that on top of the pops, you know. Yeah, no, it's not quite. It's more meditation, and you don't really want to know, you know. You know. So not everybody will be interested in it. And then, so if someone wants to learn it, there's no point coming to a specialist like me. It's probably more of a headache for them, because I'll start telling them all the things they want to watch out for. Whereas if they don't know and they go to someone who doesn't know either, but they're trying to pretend they're the world's leading expert, they actually get what they need. So it's like horses for courses. You don't get a cart horse jumping 6 foot high fences. They're to carry great big heavy. They've got to be strong and muscular and that. So you got to find what something's good for and what certain people are good for. And so you learn that not everybody's ready for the deepest levels of things. You can't just go around saying, you want the truth, here's the truth. You've got to kind of meet people where they are and give them what they need for where they are. And if they need it, they might not even need it, in which case you don't bother going too deeply with it all. But no, so I also learned that there are people out there who just want to make money, and they'll take. I mean, I had told this story about when I received that Tibetan symbol from a yogi from Tibet. What happens? A few years later, there's an American guy making an album of singing bowl music, and he writes in there, the liner notes say that he's been trained in a particular monastery or something, and he's the lineage holder of this form of Tibetan healing. Don't mention the name of the monastery, the name of the lama, nothing, just pretend. And that's based on, they've read my thing and thought, well, that's a good story, I'll have that, And I've had a guy in Glastonbury who plays drums and that, because I said I was given this symbol by a visiting Tibetan lama. He's suddenly like, I was walking around Glastonbury and I just happened to open this rubbish bin, and there's a complete set of Pisces symbols in there. Hey, thanks, Cosmos. So he's nicked that story about being given symbols and stuff. And so people will take these things because they think it's just a story to them. It's not real life. For me, it's my real life experience. To them, it's like, oh, that's a good one. I can use that. And they are totally unscrupulous. They want to make money. Their ego wants them to be number one and so important that they're not interested in being honest and true about where they are. They just got to try and knock everybody else out of the pitch. So if they find out about me, there's a guy who obviously has, and he's written a book on bowls, and so he's on about he's psychic and then blah blah blah. But I can tell he isn't. I bought a bowl off him, and bowl is tuned into a very particular ritual, and I know that if he knew that, he's not going to sell it to me, he's not going to sell it to anyone. So I know he's dead as a dodo when it comes to anything like that. But as far as he's concerned, he works with guides and things. He just wants to be in competition with me. Say, oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I work with guides. And what else? He's got an 800-year-old. Oh, that was the other thing. This album where the guy says he's trained in, he's a lineage holder in Tibet. On my album, I mentioned I've got this 12th century heart chakra bowl that's got a bit more gold than normal. What happens on his album? He's got a solid gold bowl. It's bigger than my bowl, and it's another couple of centuries older than my bowl, And I have to laugh because he's saying he's got a solid gold bowl. He doesn't know, he's ignorant of the fact that gold is a very poor sound thing. So if you've got a solid bowl, it'll sound terrible. But he don't know that, so he's just telling a story. He's just trying to be one up on me. And so that I've learned, and I don't like that side of the business. It's there are websites who try and warn people about this kind of thing. There's people come out with all kinds of silly nonsense about the frequency 432. That's just the magical. You've got to have a bowl tuned to that. You can't even tune a bowl to any frequency. I've got bowls that make 25 different sounds. How can you say it makes the note F? It's got 25 different notes. So yeah, you get to learn about human nature, I suppose, and what people. Well, it's an area where not people know. It's like the whole thing of. I've been to. My ex wanted me to go and meet this woman who was kind of channeling, and she was a trained counsellor, and so she's saying, "Oh, there's this person here," and I'm looking. No, he's not. What's she talking about? He ain't here. There's nobody. There's nobody here at the moment. And so then she said she was channeling her guide, some American, Indian, or Egyptian. I can't remember. And I thought, I can't, not know. And then hours when it finished, I'm walking around the house and she's in a room with my ex, and she's saying, oh, I'm in a terrible crisis. I can't tell whether there really is anybody else in the room or whether it's all me. Because I've trained as a counsellor. Everything I'm coming out with, I've learnt from training as a counsellor. So I thought, yeah, you're right, mate, there weren't nobody else here, you know. But it takes someone like me to know that. Any normal person off the street, our friend at the bus stop, you know, again, they wouldn't know. They've got no way of knowing, and those people can con them, because you need to be in the same ballpark to know whether they're genuine or not. And a lot of them, whether they're just willing, you know, just wishful thinking that they're wanting to be a guru or something, or whether they are deliberately lying, you know, in a way, it doesn't really matter. I had a woman who was training under a shaman, and she works with bowls, and had a guy in Singapore buying these bowls and getting them sent to me first, so I could work out what they were about and what they were for. And one of them had black magic in it, and I thought, wow, and I thought, didn't she know that? And is it her teacher? Is he doing black magic? He's done it to the bowl to do it to her. And but I thought, she doesn't even know that. And then she was making comments about the bowls. Oh, there's this feminine deity comes with this bowl. I couldn't see it, you know. So I know that some of these people are ambitious, and they may be well intentioned. They may think, oh yeah, I could, you know, I'm training with a shaman. I'm learning about these inner worlds, you know. And yeah, I'm doing it all, and yeah. But actually, it was all off. Another woman came to me, she'd got some bowls, she said, oh, here's my heart chakra. But I looked at it, I thought, it's not big enough to give a low enough note, you know. So I said, really, who told you that? And she said, oh, well, this man, he was selling off all his bowls, he owned tax or something, out east, out in India. So I'm tuning in, and I said, is he a white guy or an Indian guy? No, he's a white guy. Yeah, I thought so. And I could tell that he had put the energy around the bowl, that this is for the heart chakra. He kind of put that kind of magic around it, if you want. But the actual sound, listening to the sound, working with it, nothing to do with that. No chakra at all, you know. But so you get people like that who will interfere. They will use their magic or whatever they can use. They'll use anything to make money and to get on in the world. They have no scruples. I can only be honest, you know. But some of these people are a lot less fussy than I am, and you know, they will deliberately. I could tell that this guy had put this energy around these things. I was at another woman's house, and there was these crystals there, and I said, where did you get that? It's full of black magic. And she told me, and I knew that woman was a black magician. So I thought, oh my God. I said, you buried that in the garden? No. She said, it cost me an awful lot of money. I'm not burying that in the garden. So I thought, silly woman. Just because it costs loads of money, you want it to be broadcasting black magic in your house? Good grief. And there was a woman that contacted me by email saying, I've got this bowl, I can't get a sound out of it. None of my friends can get a sound out of it. Do you think it's cracked or broken? So I mean, she's in America or something, I can't even hear it. So I said, well, it could be. Take it back and try and get a better one, you know. Then next day she emailed saying, oh, I found out this bowl's got its own llama with it, so I will be keeping it. So I thought, she's keeping a bowl that she can't get a sound out of, that don't make a sound, because she thinks it's connected to a llama. But so as they say, there's an out as queer as folks. So I have learnt that from it, that this is quite a minefield. You know, I know that in my area, like I said, I was an avant-garde musician. They knew I played with the top people. I was very good at what I did. They respect me, and so they'll respect that I'm into this, and it means something to me. But they might, on the quiet, make fun of me. I don't know, but they will respect me, and they know that I am sincere and I'm, you know, totally committed to what I do. And they, you know, but it's a very different world to their world. You know? So I kind of learnt. In a way, I suppose I learnt that I had to be alone. I couldn't play music with other people anymore. Sometimes I have played with New Age musicians from America. Paul Horn, very famous flute player. Tim Scott, who played guitar. And Joel Andrews, who played the harp. And we did a recording up in Findhorn. Oh yeah, recording their recording studio. I forgot that one. And that came out as an album. So I have worked with some people in different situations, but on the whole, I've done solo stuff, and it's also a bit easier because the bowls aren't connected with Western notes and things. So trying to get an instrument to work with these weird sounds and the way that I play them and everything. Some of the techniques I use create lots of very complicated sounds. I mean, engineers love it. They go in the studio and it's like they've never heard these things before. It's like they're going, wow, that thing's like a chord, that bowl's got this whole kind of chord going on. It's not really cool. Someone goes in and plays a note on a piano or guitar or anything, it's a note, you know. They're not used to people hitting one thing and it makes a chord, and then the other sounds I produce. Very, very funny. There was one in this guy, it was one we did for the BBC, and it was a whole series on sound healing, I think. And so the guy said, so he'd come up with his tune and he wanted me to put bowls behind it. So he said, have you got an F? And I said, oh, was it an A? An A, I think it was. And I said, oh, try that one. He said, it's perfect, it's a perfect A. And then he said, oh, have you got an F, or whatever it was? And oh, try that one. And he said, yeah, he said, you've done this before, you're absolutely right. And I'm not, I didn't know, I just was kind of guessing. Because I hadn't sat them down and got a thing out and worked out, oh, that's an F, that's an F sharp, that's a G. I don't care about that. I don't care what note anything says it is. I just want to feel whether it does anything, whether it's got anything living in it. If there's anybody at home, you know, or whether it's just got the lights on but there's nobody in. I want to know, is there something in this sound that takes me deeper into life? So I've learned that there are those opportunities that are there for those who've got the ability to follow that path. And it's not everybody's path, and it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be. It's just my way of working. And you know, I don't. With Keith Tippett, I did say, look, I don't do drugs or alcohol or anything, and if I'm playing with you and you're totally out of it, it will restrict my playing, because I won't be able to play as perfect as normal, because your playing will restrict what I do. So could I ask that you maybe do a little bit less when we're playing together or anything? But I said, it's totally, I'm not asking, I'm not demanding it, I'm just letting you know that it will limit me. And if you don't care about it, that's fine. If you do care about it, that's also fine, you know. But I think it did become a bit of an issue for him. But I never at any time say, I'm not playing with you if you're going to drink or smoke or da-di-da, you know. And but that was the only time I've ever said anything to anybody. Because most of the people I was working with avant-garde jazz, I wouldn't expect they were into drugs. They were into alcohol, I'm sure. Some of them might have experimented, maybe, but it wasn't obvious that they were in that kind of world. Probably as the years went on, they might have got more into it. I just then I've stopped playing with people and just doing my own thing. Or the thing that comes through me. So I've always been quite an individual character, which comes from experiences when I was born, only just a few days old. So I've always been independent and individual. And then I've not been trained with anybody. When I got into the bowls, there was nobody doing it. You couldn't go for lessons anywhere, or evening classes, or buy a book on it, or nobody else was making music out of it. You know, it was like nothing. I was a blank canvas. I could just allow it to unfold. And in fact, I sometimes feel sorry for people who are coming along now who are being instructed in how to work with all this stuff, and sometimes wrongly. But that's just the fact that it's not a wide open. I was very lucky, it was free for me, and because I was doing free music and I was doing free improvised music, and the improvised music I did was sometimes to do with very deep listening. You know, somebody would make a sound and I'd make a sound that went with it, you know, and everybody was listening like that, listening to each individual sound very intently. So of course when I came to try and think, right, what's living in this sound, and I'd strike a gong that went on for several minutes, I had a real chance to observe what it was doing to me as I allowed that sound to go on. And as I said at the beginning, you know, when I then came to play with other people again after a weekend off, getting back into my stuff, it was crisis time, you know, because they were not hearing what I'm hearing. So, you know, so that just became a kind of limitation of my path, but I didn't mind. I didn't, you know, it only meant that probably less chance of making much money and stuff. I mean, I made 126 albums, so, you know, some of that is with other musicians, quite a lot is on my own, you know, so whether I'd have carried on making music with everybody, I'd have made more, or less solo albums, whatever. I don't know. I've got through. That's all I'm glad. I've had enough food. I've had a roof over my head. You know, I've managed to get through somehow, doing what I've been created to do, even though it's nothing what people want, or it's not the normal thing. And I just had to have that. I'm like a little seed for the future, and it's a tough little thing. So I'm planted in the soil. I'm planted in these conditions that I will grow and become what I'm supposed to be, and fulfill that little need out of the whole wide world of music. There's millions of people that make music on the planet. I've got to do it this way, and so I'm doing that, and that's what I accept. I don't expect anyone else to do it or not do it. I don't care whether, I'll just have to do my bit to the best of my ability. So I'm a perfectionist, and sometimes I have to not be a perfectionist. That's part of being a perfectionist. Have to accept that sometimes everything's just perfect as it is. You can overthink things, you can, and then there's a whole thing about intention and result, that's an artistic thing, and sometimes I should just be in the now and not have a certain intention to do a certain thing, and then find the sounds to do it, and aim at doing it, and be able at the end of it all to think, well, I achieved it, or I didn't, or it was all right apart from that little bit, or so that's a technique that I might use, but I'm not stuck with intention and result. I can just be in the now with no control over where it's going, and I can just be in the moment.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for doing the interview.
You're right, thank you.
That does conclude. That was my last question I had.
Right, brilliant.
And thank you to you guys for watching.
Yeah, thank you. Hope you found it interesting and maybe inspiring. There are people who say I've inspired them.